What's up, guys? It's the Bluebloods, and we are back with another episode here for the off season. I know we miss football just as much as y'all do. We got the Senior Bowl coming up. We'll have some exclusive coverage for that. But for right now, we're back on our series of the best of 2020. We just did the best of 2020 bowl season, but now we're on to MVPs. We're picking the MVPs for each conference for this past season. We got them all here. We got breakdowns, we got stats, we have opinions. It's all here right now. So guys, we have a full show today. We have a lot of players to get to that deserve a lot of praise. So let's go ahead and kick it off. So we're starting with Group of Five. We're just going to lump them all together. We know that this show would be like 3 hours long if we had to go through every single conference. So these Group of Five players can come from any Group of Five school. So Brandon, why don't you go ahead and kick the show off with your first MVP for the Group of Five conferences?
Zach, it's not even a Group of Five. It's just an independent school for me. And I've got to go with Zach Wilson. He's got to be my MVP in this category above anybody else, honestly, just because of his sheer numbers. I mean, we're talking about a kid who played more games this season in this COVID season than he has in the past 2 years. He's played in 9 games the past 2 years. This year he played 12, and he was the starter at BYU last year. So I don't know. Maybe we'll figure that out someday. But this season he passed. He had a completion percentage of 73.5. That's insane. He had 3,692 total passing yards, 33 passing touchdowns, and we're not even talking about his rushing stats right now. I mean, if we want to talk about this kid rushing, he had 70 rushes this season for 254 yards and 10 touchdowns. I mean, he was lethal on his feet. And not to mention, Zach, did you know that he had receptions this year? He caught 2 passes. I didn't. I found that out today. This kid was lethal. He finished 8th in Heisman voting this season. That's insane. I know we kind of glossed over that because we don't talk about anyone who's not in the top 3, anyone who wasn't invited to the Zoom call, or the top 4. Anyway, no, Zach Wilson had to win on a list somewhere, and so I've got him right here at number 1 in the Group of Five / independent schools.
I'm disappointed in you, man.
Shouldn't be.
Like, I'm not even going to spoil it for everybody. I'm not going to spoil it too much, but y'all already know Brandon knows nothing about defense. Brandon, when he watches football, he just turns the TV off when his favorite team's on defense. He doesn't even like defense. All he sees is the offense running against ghosts. I'm going defense with my number 1 player in the Group of Five, which just sounds crazy given that, Zach Wilson was there. I'm going Xavier Collins. Tulsa, he's the linebacker for the Tulsa Golden Hurricanes. He was the AAC Defensive Player of the Year. He won the Nagurski Award this year, Brandon, and the Bernark Award. It went 3 for 3. He had 46 total tackles. He led the AAC in interceptions and was 7th in the country as a linebacker, Brandon. He led the American in interception return yards and was 2nd in the NCAA, and he returned 2 of his 4 interceptions for touchdowns this year.
Yeah, it's wild.
Kid was all over the field. He's hyper athletic, man. He had 4 sacks, 7.5 tackles for loss. Brandon, he averaged 40 yards of return on his interceptions.
That's insane.
And this kid's a turnover machine, man. He forced 2 fumbles. He recovered another. I mean, he can be a coverage guy. He can be a downhill run stopper. There was no question in my mind that Xavier Collins was probably the best linebacker, I would say, maybe in the country this year. And I know that's a strong statement, given that he was a junior, but in 8 games to put up 54 tackles, 4 sacks, 4 interceptions, 2 touchdowns as a linebacker, and to do what he did at Tulsa, I think everyone was shocked how good Tulsa is. But when you have players like Xavier Collins out there, man, it's not hard to compete in the AAC.
No, it's not. And honestly, he made this team so much better. This is a Tulsa team that we didn't give enough credit to until close to the end of the season. But yeah, man, I mean, he was a big part of that success.
I mean, this is someone who I think could have first-round potential. I don't think he's declared or not yet, but if he comes back, I think you have to say that he is hands-on, probably the best Group of Five player coming back next year. But Brandon, we'll snake it a little bit. I'll go next. For my number 2 spot, my honorable mention here, I know this is going to sound crazy given that you started off with Zach Wilson. I'm putting it Desmond Ridder here.
Okay.
As my number 2 pick. He was the quarterback for Cincinnati, man. We talked about him. If you listen to the Bluebloods and have been, you know this name. This name is burned into your psyche. Everyone knows that how we feel about Desmond Ridder. Brandon, he was the AAC Offensive Player of the Year this year. I mean, he led the conference in pass completion percentage. That is all the way up, Brandon. We talked last year that his inaccuracy is something he had to work on. He went from 55% last year, which ranked 10th in the conference, to 66% completion percentage.
Wild.
That's just a huge jump. And, on top of that, he had 19 passing touchdowns. He was 4th in yards with almost 2,300. He lowered his interception total from 9 to 6. He was 3rd in passer efficiency rating. This dude is just on a different level. And Brandon, what really made me put him over Zach Wilson is that he led the American in rushing touchdowns. He had 12 rushing touchdowns this year on top of what he was already putting up passing. So he gives him 31 total touchdowns this year. And I just think he's a more dynamic playmaker. I think he played a tougher schedule than Zach Wilson did. And I think overall, just with the body of work, Desmond Ridder deserved a shout out here for the Group of 5 MVP.
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and move on to another quarterback.
If it's who I think it is, I'm just going to go ahead and hit stop recording. We'll just release this tomorrow. This 5-minute segment.
You should simply not do that, Zach, because I know you're upset about this kid. I know you didn't want him to leave Auburn, but he did. Malik Willis.
Okay, we're good. Zach. I thought you were going Dylan Gabriel, and I was going to quit the podcast.
No. I'm listen. I love UCF as much as the next guy, but no. Malik Willis, Zach, and the reason that you said that you picked Desmond Ridder is because on top of his passing touchdowns, he had 10 rushing touchdowns. That was the most for a quarterback in the AAC. Malik Willis had 14 rushing touchdowns. He's an independent, I guess. Liberty was independent. But that's more than that, Zach. So I feel like you have to at least kind of agree with me here. Not only that, Zach, but he had 170 completed passes this season. His passing percentage wasn't the highest. It was 64.2. It's not awful, not great. 2,250 yards through the air with 20 total touchdowns, only 6 interceptions. But really, he got it done on his feet, and that's why he was so dynamic, and that's why I have him at my runner-up for this award. 14 touchdowns, like I said. 944 yards in the ground. I think that's more than Chuba Hubbard had this whole season. That's 6.7 yards a carry. That's crazy if you're a quarterback who averages 6.7 yards a carry, because factored into those rushing yards, Zach, are sacks. So if you're averaging 6.7 yards on the ground as a quarterback per carry, this guy, you have to understand this guy's a playmaker. That's simply what he is. He's a playmaker. He took this Liberty team as far as they went, and this Liberty team, I'd say, was really, really good this past season. There's reasons that he is probably going to be a grad transfer in this upcoming season, and he's probably going to end up at a big-name Power 5 school.
The fact that, we'll just go ahead and address that rumor now. I think I know that CJ Stroud's a good quarterback, and everyone's excited for him. If he goes to Ohio State, he should start.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that makes him an instant national championship contender.
Zach, how do you feel that Auburn went with Bo Nix over him?
We didn't have to address that. We were having a good episode. We were about to go through an entire episode with no Auburn or LSU talk, and you had to bring it up.
I'm sorry. It's mind-boggling.
Once we get to the SEC segment, I'm talking about how each of these players did against LSU now.
No,
that's where we're going. That's how we're going to do this.
We don't have to.
But yeah, guys, there's so many good Group of 5 players. The fact that, we had so many stars in that conference. Yes, even like Dylan Gabriel that didn't get talked about because of how good a lot of these guys played just shows how far they come. Grayson McCall easily could have been up there too, out of Coastal Carolina. There's so much talent in the Group of 5, and I think that's why diehard college football fans get mad at the national pundits who said that there's no parity in college football, because there are some stars at that I guess underground level of college football that just no one hears about. But let's move to, I guess, the basement level of Power 5 football with the ACC. I think that didn't they lose almost every single game in the bowl season?
It's bad. Yeah,
Them in the
pretty bad.
I know the Pac-12 did, but I think they might have had like one win, but I think that might have been it.
Yeah, that's
bad.
Right.
That's tough. That's a tough look. But I'll kick this one off, Brandon. So I made you start the last one. I feel like I want to name two players here. It's so hard to pick one of these guys, but I went with the.
Oh, I know you're gonna pick my guy.
I had to go with the one who I thought had the best season, Brandon, and I'm going Javonte Williams. It easily could be Michael Carter. They both, did their thing, but I went with Javonte Williams, man. 1,200 yards rushing, Brandon. 7.3 yards per carry on over 150 carries, 19 rushing touchdowns, 3 receiving touchdowns. I mean, this kid was so explosive. He was third in the conference in rushing yards. He was third in the conference in rushing yards per attempt. He led the ACC in touchdowns and was third in the entire country in that. I mean, from yards from scrimmage, he was 7th. He was 4th in the NCAA in touchdowns from scrimmage. I mean, Brandon, he led the ACC in points scored this year. That's just insane to me. The kid could do it all. I thought he was the more explosive running back this year. Out of the backfield, Michael Carter kind of did the dirty work. I mean, this kid's going to be a serious NFL player, I think. And I think it was Pro Football Focus had him second, Brandon, over Najee Harris in this next draft class.
They did. That was just crazy. Like they had Travis Etienne first. So I don't know.
I think you could take any of these 3 guys, man. You can't go wrong. I mean, if I would have told Brandon, I just want to brag. Can I go ahead and brag a little bit on myself? Javonte Williams was my breakout player in the ACC from the preview, so I just want to say I hit this one on the head, my guy. But I don't think you could go wrong with Michael Carter or Javonte Williams. But for my taste, I went with Javonte Williams here.
Yeah, I got you. And Zach, that's funny because I know everyone heard me kind of get a little bit upset when you mentioned one of these 2 guys. I actually have Michael Carter as my MVP,
I love it.
Which is crazy. And I'd love for you to add on a little bit. But, I mean, very similar stat lines, I think, to Javonte Williams. I mean, he had 1,245 total yards or total rushing yards this season on 156 carries. He averaged 8 yards a carry, Zach. That is bananas. That's beyond me. 9 rushing touchdowns. Not only that, 25 receptions for 267 yards. I mean, he was averaging 10.7 yards a reception. So this guy can really do it both. And that's why I think that at the next level, he's going to be dangerous. I mean, I get it. I understand Javonte Williams is probably 1 and this guy's 1A. Sure. But these guys were both taking snaps. I mean, they were sharing time on the field. And I think that's because, like you said, I think that Javonte Williams might have been a little bit of the flashier guy. Michael Carter, maybe a little bit more gritty, taking care of the dirty work, like you said. But I think both of these guys are going to be stars, and that's not even to mention his kick returns, which I think, when he did return kicks, he does fairly well. I mean, he averaged 19.5 yards of return, pretty good, Zach.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, Michael Carter is honestly just a star. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and harp on it a little bit too much, but what was the reason, or not the reason? What do you have to say about this guy? Because I know this is probably a really hard pick for you too.
Yeah, it was super hard. I mean, I thought they both kind of deserved it. Listen, I get it. If we're talking about most valuable player, Trevor Lawrence, he won the Player of the Year, Brendan, for the ACC for Offensive Player of the Year. But I think really and truly, Brendan, I know this is going to sound crazy. I think one of these 2 guys should have won it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think they and this is kind of the thing that college football does. They hand out lifetime achievement awards. Mm-hmm. For this season, it had to be one of these 2 guys, but I get it. I get that you have to give it Trevor Lawrence.
I'm going to ask you this. How many votes do you think Javonte Williams and Michael Carter got in the Offensive Player of the Year voting?
How many votes were there? Like, I gotta have a gauge here.
Hang on, I gotta add these up now. Oh, it was over 50. It was over 50. It was
over
like
50 votes?
Yeah, it was. I think it's 60 on the dot, but it's over 50.
Are we talking about like combined? How many did they get?
Yes,
10.
3.
Wow. Wow. This
Javonte Williams had all 3. Michael Carter didn't even get a vote.
what?
That's Javonte Williams finished 4th, Brandon. You want to name the 3 players ahead of him?
I would not like to.
Well, clearly, Trevor Lawrence was first with 45 votes, which dominated. Travis Etienne got 7. Ian Book got 5. And then Javonte Williams was tied with Sam Howell with 3. And then rounding up the back, De'Aaron King got 1.
Right.
That's crazy.
No, I mean, it's insane.
That just blows my mind. Like, listen, I am the biggest Travis Etienne fan on this podcast. It may be in the world behind like one person. And I don't think I would give Travis Etienne a vote over this kid. Either kid. No. I mean, Javonte Williams and Michael Carter were the best 2 running backs, arguably in the country.
Zach, do you know how close I was to just choosing them for my top? I was choosing
one of them. I thought about it too.
Top and my number 2 for the runner-up.
I definitely thought about it, and for my second player, man, I felt like it's the same thing. Both of the guys who I was stuck on play for the same team in the same position.
Okay,
it's tough. I went with Rashad Weaver though, defensive end out of Pitt. He had 14 tackles for loss, Brandon, and 7.5 sacks this year, which was top 5 in the ACC. I was really torn between Weaver and Patrick Jones II, who I believe led the ACC in sacks this year with 9. But I just felt like Weaver had a more overall impact, and Weaver is just a better overall player, so I kind of gave it to him. He had 3 forced fumbles as well. I think if you look at Pitt, man, the one thing we said about them this year is that defensive line is something serious, and I think Rashad Weaver and Patrick Jones II just straight shows you what they could do. I mean, he came in 3rd in the Defensive Player of the Year voting, and I thought Rashad Weaver was the best defensive lineman. I get it. If you want to give it to Jalen Phillips, I get you, or Jeremiah Owusu from Notre Dame, I got you. But for me, I thought Rashad Weaver was the most dominant, unstoppable player just on a team that didn't get enough attention, Brandon.
Yeah, it's funny. I wish you would quit leading things on before I say them, but my pick here is actually Jeremiah Owusu. I'm not even gonna try Owusu. I know, Zach. I told you pre episode I only had offensive players. I promise you from here on out I only have offensive players. I was so torn on who I was going to pick for my second player here in the ACC, but I couldn't not pick somebody from this Notre Dame defense. I mean, this guy was just so explosive this season. He had 42 solo tackles, 20 assisted tackles. That makes for 62 total tackles in the year, 11 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, and an interception. I mean, if you watch this Notre Dame defense this season, you know how crazy this defense just was in general. I mean, they're the defense that somewhat held off Clemson, but held off everybody else the entire season. I can't put my finger on exactly how many points they held teams to, but I know I think it was in the teens. This defense was incredible. I mean, their only 2 losses this season came to Alabama and Clemson, who just a healthy Clemson's dangerous in general, but these 2 teams can score, and they did, and that's exactly what happened. They were too much for them. But yeah, I mean, this kid was incredible, Zach.
Well, I mean, let's not forget that they held Alabama to their lowest point total of the season.
Yeah,
31 points. That's what that defense did, and for me, I felt like Notre Dame had one of the best defenses in the country this year.
Oh, absolutely, and if I'd give them at least top 3, if not top 2 defenses.
Yeah, I mean, they were up there, and that's why this team was a playoff team, and I don't think you could have went wrong there. I tried to think outside the box with some of my picks. That way we weren't just giving y'all, oh, this person won MVP for this conference, so here we are. We're trying to give you guys, like, our picks, but, like, I think he was right up there. And it just shows that the ACC does have a little bit of talent, as much as, average fans want to hate on the ACC. There are some strong defensive players. 'Cause, I mean, I think on defense, you could have picked Jalen Phillips. You could have picked Jeremiah. You could have picked Rashad Weaver. You could have picked Patrick Jones. I mean, you could have picked almost anybody. I mean, what about some of the DBs on Clemson? What about James Skakowski at linebacker? What about Miles Murphy? I mean, there were so many players on the ACC on the defensive side of the ball that you could have went with.
Right.
But we're going to a hard conference. We talked before this, Brandon. This is one of the harder conferences to pick because they only played 6 games. But
and it's not even that they only played 6 games. It was just, to me, it was that I don't know if there's a player that played like very consistently well for all 6 games. I feel like there were players that either got warmed up in the first couple games and then just took off in the second half of the season, or there were, I know one specifically that didn't play a full season because he got injured, but he ignited his team when he did play.
So yeah, I'm everyone's wondering now, who do you have as your first MVP?
Michael Penix Jr. I mean, you have to, right?
He has to
at least be in the conversation. And I get it. On paper, you look at his stats and they don't really light anything up. But you have to remember, this guy only played a partial season. He ended up having a season-ending injury because they only played 6 games, of course. But I mean, what he did do on the field, I mean, he led this Indiana team to victories that no one thought that they would get. He led this team to an almost comeback against Ohio State. And really, Zach, I don't know what it was about him. He just kind of lit up the field when he was out there, and he kind of brought this energy, because when you look at his stats, like I said, he only had a 56% pass completion percentage. He only passed for 1,645 yards, which I guess through however many games he played. What was it, 4 games that he actually played in?
Yeah.
Or anyway, something like that. 14 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. I mean, that's really, really good if you want to talk about it. I get it. He wasn't super electric on his feet like he was in this past season. I think last year he did a little bit better in the few games that he actually played last season. He only had 25 rushing yards this season. But like I said, I mean, he just had this X factor about him that made him bring this offense to life and led this team to places that we didn't really ever think Indiana could get to in football.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot. I just didn't pick him because I felt like, after 3-4 games, you just can't be the MVP for the season. But I like the pick there. I got a guy who also plays quarterback that I've been real critical of, but I just didn't see another offensive player I could give it to. And so we are getting Justin Fields here.
Yeah.
I know that's tough. I mean, when you complete 70% of your passes for 2,100 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions, you got to get it. I mean, he's back-to-back Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year. I mean, I don't even know what you want me to say about it, Brian. I mean, he's first in passing yards per attempt this year, first in adjusted yards per attempt, first in passing touchdowns, first in passer efficiency. He's number 1 in total yards, number 1 in touchdowns responsible for. I mean, this kid did it all this year, man. I mean, for his career, Brandon, he's number 1 in the Big Ten history in passing yards per attempt.
Yeah.
He's number 4 in the entire history of the NCAA in passer efficiency rating. I mean
that's absolutely, especially since the Big Ten thing is surprising because he only played I'm gonna give this a half season. He played a season and a half in the Big Ten.
No, but I think we both agree. The talent of Justin Fields took that Ohio State offense to the next level that they needed to get to actually compete for a national title. I know Dwayne Haskins was good, but he was not Justin Fields. They just didn't have that it factor quarterback, and so I think Justin Fields really brought that. And as much as I've been critical of him, I think he deserves this MVP of the Big Ten.
Yeah, I can see that, Zach.
And I got to go defense here, Brandon. I got to go defense here. Davion Nixon, Iowa defensive tackle, Brandon. Okay, listen, I'm gonna let you know this kid is 6'3", 305 pounds, Brandon.
Just a unit.
He took an interception 71 yards to the house.
How could you not give it to him?
I mean, Brandon, 45 tackles, 13 and a half for loss, 5 sacks, an interception for a touchdown, 71 yards, and a forced fumble this year as a defensive tackle at over 300 pounds. Yeah. I mean, a unit. He was the defensive player of the year this year in the Big Ten. He was first in tackles for loss, second in sacks. And listen to this, Brandon. He is number 6 in interception return yards as a 300-pound interior defensive lineman.
I love it. I cannot get enough of this guy.
And he's first in Big Ten in interceptions returned for touchdowns.
See, that seems like it's not allowed, but it happened.
Hey, it happened, and I am so I love this kid. I mean, he's athletic, he's dynamic, and I felt like because Iowa really wasn't in the national spotlight this year, he didn't get the shine he deserved. But I thought Davion Nixon at defensive tackle deserved at least an honorable mention here for MVP. I mean, when you play D tackle and you can have an impact on a football game, I mean, these are like Derek Brown, Javon Kinlaw type stats that we're seeing from this kid. He's a junior, and his first year was last year, and he had a great year. This year, he really shined. I think he's coming back next year, Brandon. This could be a potential first-round pick right here, Davion Nixon out of Iowa.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, Zach. And so for my runner-up here, I'm going to have to go with another guy who he played most of the season, I would say, except for a majority of one game. He didn't really start lighting things up until the end of the season, though. But just the potential this guy has and what he did for his team when it mattered in the conference championship game and in the playoff, I'm going to have to give this one to Trey Sermon, Zach. I mean, this guy lit up the stat sheet once he actually started playing. And I want to say that turnaround point happened really against Michigan State right there toward the end of the season, where he had 10 carries for 112 yards and a touchdown. But it didn't end there. Obviously, he took all of that into the Big Ten championship game, where he rushed for 331 yards on 29 carries against Northwestern, and that's the moment that everybody's ears perked up and they said, "Trey who? Trey Sermon? Yeah, this guy is the real deal." And so then he went on to the first round of the playoffs, where they played Clemson, and guess what he did, Zach? He lit it up again. 193 yards on 31 carries for a touchdown. And I know Justin Fields had a big game there, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. But Trey Sermon had just as big a role in this game, in this huge victory, as anybody else on the field.
I love it.
Unfortunately, he got injured on the very first play of the national championship game, or else I think, honestly, Ohio State might have been able to hang in there a little bit longer with Alabama. Just seeing the way things happen in this game, I don't know if Bama runs out to that 28-point or 28-10 second quarter that they actually had.
Right. I mean, I definitely think it would have changed the entire complexion of the national championship game. I mean, yeah, you have to think so. I mean, the kid was so dynamic, and I think, if we did best of 2020 performances, that Trey Sermon performance in the Big Ten championship probably is number 1.
Oh my God, 331 yards.
Maybe 2 because DeVonta Smith put up 200 in the first half of the Natty, but fair. I think it's definitely top 3. I feel very confident saying that it's at least top 3. So I don't mind that pick at all. And is he coming back next year? I believe he is.
I'm not sure. I know that he's I guess he still has 1 more year of eligibility.
Yeah, because of COVID.
No, he doesn't. Oh yeah, I guess besides COVID, he didn't ever redshirt though. He played all 3 seasons at Oklahoma, but I guess he could technically come back.
Wouldn't that be just crazy?
That would be nuts.
I mean, that would be insane. But to the Big 12, man, this one was hard because I feel like there was so many options on, one side of the ball, but I feel like there was an obvious one on offense, Brandon. But we have the same one. So let's just go ahead and knock it out. Barisi Hall, running back, Iowa State, 6th in Heisman voting, guys. He was the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. And I know I said we didn't want to be chalk, but let me just run through this real quick, okay? He was 1st in rush attempts, first in rushing yards, first in rushing touchdowns, first in plays of scrimmage, first from yards from scrimmage, first in touchdowns per scrimmage, first in touchdowns regardless, and he also was first in points. What else you want?
Zach. He is what we thought Chuba Hubbard was going to be this year.
Yeah, that's disappointing.
And so, like, we know how much we talked about Chuba Hubbard on this podcast last season. And we talked about Breece Hall probably about the same amount this season.
Yeah, I want to. I can brag about that. It's on the website, guys. Go look at who I picked as my breakout play. One of my breakout players in the Big 12. We are 2 for 2 right now.
Okay, fair.
And you're right. I mean, Brandon, and I think we're gonna have that episode, but like for terms of the biggest disappointments, Chuba Hubbard's got to be on there.
It has to be.
I mean, Brandon, and not only, I gave the Big Ten stats. He was first in the country in rushing yards, second in the entire country for rushing touchdowns, third in straight touchdowns. I mean, this kid did it all, man. I mean, he averaged over 5 yards per carry. He had 2 receiving touchdowns. He averaged over 8 yards per catch. This kid was so good, and it just makes me wonder, Brandon, he's coming back next year. How do you even top what you did this year?
I have no idea. That is a good question. I mean, he's only a sophomore, Zach.
It's scary.
Legitimately could, like, that's nuts. And I know Chuba Hubbard was a sophomore last year. We're probably gonna get that, but man, come on, let's not jinx this one.
This kid was by far and away the best player in the Big 12, guys.
Absolutely.
And it's not even a conversation, but I got to go defense, Brandon. I know you probably got another another offensive player you got to talk about.
I do.
But I'm going Joseph Osai from Texas as my runner-up MVP. Linebacker, 55 total tackles, Brandon. 15.5 for loss, 5.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, a fumble recovery. This kid was all over the field, and if it weren't for some injuries that kept him out of some games, Brandon, I think he could have been. He could have been right up there with Breece Hall's MVP. But when he was on the field, he had that immediate impact. I mean, we talked last year about some players like Joe Burrow, Derrick Brown on the defensive side of the ball, where if they were on the field, the defense or offense was automatically better. I think that's the type of impact Joseph Osai had for the Longhorns defense this year.
Yeah, no, I definitely see where you're coming from with that one, Zach. And it's horns down forever. Just remember that because Zach and I both have a Longhorn on here. I hate it, and I don't even think he had as good of a season as he did last season. But just the beginning, the way he started this season, and the way that he propelled Texas through certain games, and the way that he did it all without really, was there a single weapon on Texas's offense this season?
Not until Bijan Robinson broke out like week 8.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's a little bit too late in what is it, 10 games for the Big 12 this season or something like that. Yes. So that's a little bit too late. I know I gave Trey Sermon the award, but I think Sam Ehlinger had a really good season, and that's kind of hidden by Texas doing like wetting the bed, I guess, this year. Losing games they really shouldn't have. And I don't like giving credit to him at all. But I mean, he passed for 2,566 yards this season, which is his second worst overall, but he played less games. He passed for 26 total touchdowns to only 5 interceptions. I mean, that's you can say whatever you want about Texas, whatever you want about Sam Ehlinger. That's a great ratio. I know he only passed for 60% on the season, which is, a little bit probably below average overall. But he got it done on the ground as well. I mean, I know when you think about Sam Ehlinger, you aren't necessarily thinking about a dual threat quarterback, but you have to remember until week 8, they didn't really have a running back they could lean on. And so I remember a couple weeks there when Sam Ehlinger was the leading rusher. He rushed for 377 yards in the season, 8 total touchdowns. I mean, this guy scored. What do you want me to say? He scored 34 total touchdowns in the season, Zach. And so I have to give him at least some kind of consideration for this award.
I like it. I mean, if you go back to the Oklahoma game, if they didn't have him, they were going to get beat by 50. Sam Ellinger put that entire team, that entire roster, that entire coaching staff on his back and carried them to overtime.
You're right.
I mean,
And
I had a text, I had a text from somebody who said he looked like Tim Tebow, Brandon. That's how crazy he was playing that week.
I don't know about that, but okay.
I'm talking about just that game. Like, that's the type of game he had, is where he just was like, okay, don't worry about it. Like, he looked like Tim Tebow against Florida State when it was raining, and because Texas has those bright white jerseys, and he had that dirt and mud all over him, and they were like, man, this dude is just eating out here. And I'm like, the kid's good. We hate on him on the podcast sometimes because he plays for the wrong team, but like, this kid is a baller. And if he would have stayed with Steve Sarkisian, I would be so excited to see what he would put up in that system.
That's what I'm screaming over here, because this team went 6-3 this season with essentially him being the only player on this offense. Like, they went 6-3. Sam Ellinger was that good, and Tom Herman still got fired. Like, I don't get it. I don't know how you get fired after that, but he did.
Hey, they nailed the hire. They nailed the hire, though.
Oh my God, they couldn't have done any better. Unless they got like Urban Meyer,
which the Jaguars said, "Hey, leave our guy alone.
Yeah,
let's stop." But yeah, I like that pick, man. As much as we give Sam Ellinger hell, he had one heck of a season. But we're going to get to the second hardest conference to pick, because the Pac-12, we only got to play. Some teams only play like 4 games, 3 games for some. But I felt like there was an obvious MVP here, Brandon, and that was Jarek Broussard, Colorado running back. In 6 games, guys, this kid put up 900 yards rushing.
I mean, it's what Zach and I, this is weird because we didn't have the same pick for a while there, but I agree. He was by far the MVP of this conference.
Yeah, I mean, 5 rushing touchdowns, over almost 900 yards. He had 65 yards receiving, but it's not really about the stats just because the Pac-12 didn't play. But let's compare him to his own conference. He was the Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year. He was first in rush attempts, first in rush yards. He was 4th in rushing touchdowns, first from yards from scrimmage. I mean, this kid led that conference in everything, and he was dominant. And this was all in his true sophomore year. He didn't play last year. He finally got a chance this year as a true sophomore at 5'9", 185, and he dominated for the Buffs this year. And I think that's why they were undefeated there for a while, Brandon, and until that USC game really wasn't exposed.
Oh my God. Do you think this Colorado team was actually good? Because I don't. I think that he was incredible. I mean, Jarek Broussard carried this team, really. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. He's the reason they were undefeated for so long.
Yeah, and if you didn't get to watch this kid, watch him next year, man. His film is electric. And I think if you watched, I think it was the Texas game in the Alamo Bowl where they play Texas, he showed out. I think Jarek Broussard is a guy you got to look out for next year. I think right now, Brandon, outside of Keaton Slovis, he's got to be the odds-on favorite for the Player of the Year next year.
Yeah, he has to be. He absolutely has to be. I mean, let's hope he can replicate this season.
Yeah, and, for my second pick, this one comes with heavy hearts, man. And I felt like we couldn't pick this conference MVP without talking about this kid. And, we want to say rest in peace, Todd Jordan, but this kid deserves a shout out for MVP, man. As a true freshman, Brandon, at 5'7", this kid averaged over 7 yards per carry and 6 touchdowns in only 5 games.
I mean, he was incredible. I mean, as a true freshman, like you said, I mean, that's incredible. I understand. Well, he only played 5 games this season, but
only 5 games.
Wow. I didn't even see his stats until just now. He wasn't my pick, but I definitely see where you're coming from with this one. That is, I mean, just a tragedy.
This kid was a straight baller, man. I mean, 2nd in the conference in rushing yards per attempt, 3rd in touchdowns. I mean, to be undersized at 5'7" and to do what he was doing for Utah this year is just outrageous. I mean, this kid was probably, I think, Brandon, I believe he won Freshman of the Year for the Pac-12. And, I know that there's all kind of dudes who probably deserve an MVP thing, but I just felt like I could not let this go by without giving this kid a shout out. And so definitely prayers out to his family and everything, man. But this kid definitely balled out and is one of my MVPs for the Pac-12 this season.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on to my last MVP, or my runner-up for MVP of the season. Everyone knows that Keaton cooks, but Keaton wouldn't cook without his receivers. Amon-Ra St. Brown, because this kid, I mean, Zach, what an incredible season he had. And I get it. There was only 6 games, so you have to keep that in mind. But he had 41 receptions for 478 yards on the season. 7 total touchdowns. That's more than any other year in his career. And I'm talking about last season when he played 13 games and USC made it to a bowl game. And they actually played in the bowl game. They didn't play in one this year. He had 11.7 yards per reception. Like I said, 7 total touchdowns. And honestly, he is who carried Keaton this year. Keaton, I love you, man. Please come on the podcast. But Amon-Ra St. Brown saved you this season.
Listen, I am not going to lie to you here, Brandon. I'm going to brag a little bit again. He was on my Pac-12 breakout players to watch, so I want to brag a little bit. I had him on there. I will post. Y'all go check out the bluebloodspod.com for that.
He was on Zach's breakout players to watch after a over 1,000 passing yard season last year.
That's true. Hey, guess what? He was on a lot of people's, Brandon, so do your research. But to wrap up this episode, man, we got the SEC. Listen, we're going to go ahead, okay? Hang on. Me and Brandon picked 2 players, but we left one of them off. Let's just go ahead and say. Okay, I picked 2 players, but did not want to be chalk. DeVonta Smith is the MVP. We get it. Can we just please talk about some other players along with DeVonta Smith? Like, we get it. He's really good. but like we talk about him a lot. Let's just go ahead and get it over with, Brandon. The Heisman winner. Why did you pick him? As everyone already knows why you did.
Zach, why didn't you pick him? I get it. You didn't want to be chalk, but good Lord, Zach. I mean, what didn't this kid do this season? He had 117 receptions for, wait for it, 1,856 yards over a shortened season. Yeah, he played the same amount of games he played last season. He only played half a game in the national championship, as he did for a lot of the regular season as well, because even though Alabama had an all SEC season this year, he still got pulled. He still didn't play second halves, and that's how good this Alabama team was. That's how good he was. He averaged 15.9 yards reception this year, 23 touchdowns. I mean, he was the Heisman winner, Zach. What do you want me to say? Why, like I said, why didn't you pick him?
I did. I just picked like a runner-up offensive player.
And he returned punt, Zach.
I know.
Did you see his punt return?
I know.
237 total yards on punt returns. That's 21.5 yards a return.
Let's just go down the list of awards. AP Player of the Year, Bolitnikoff Award winner, Heisman winner, Maxwell Award winner, SEC Offensive Player of the Year, and the Walter Camp Player of the Year award.
Okay.
Good Lord. Listen, he was first in the country in catches, first in the country in receiving yards. What was it? First in the country in receiving touchdowns. I mean, Brandon, for his career, he is number 1 in SEC history in career touchdowns for a receiver, and he's 5th in the entire NCAA.
That's insane. I mean, just when you thought Alabama couldn't do it again, they couldn't produce another receiver. They couldn't produce a receiver better than Julio. Here we are. I don't know what happened, but let's watch.
Brandon, let's not even that. We talked about him not even being the best wide receiver on the team this year.
Jalen Waddle wasn't. I was going to say he probably wasn't. Jalen Waddle just didn't play, and then he played on a broken ankle.
That's scary. That is scary. I mean, Brandon, he was first in the SEC in punt return yards, and that was 3rd in the country.
Right.
I mean, nuts. This dude, listen, how about this? You know, we always have the debate in the NFL, Brandon, who carried who, Tom Brady or Bill Belichick. who carried who? DeVonta Smith or Nick Saban? Who really was coaching out there?
Great question.
Because listen, we already have proof they play rock, paper, scissors to determine the routes. So I don't want to hear Steve Sarkisian did a damn thing. DeVonta Smith is out there with John Mechie throwing rock every time.
Oh, yeah. Every time.
He knew. John Mechie knew not to win that rock, paper, scissors game before he got smacked.
He said, I guess I'm going to go with scissors again. This is ridiculous.
Listen, Brandon, this is how I really feel about it, and this is going to come as a shock to you, a shock to anyone who knows me being an Auburn fan. DeVonta Smith, Brandon, sealed up the greatest receiver of all time in SEC history.
Okay.
I believe that wholeheartedly. This is the guy, and I don't want to hear another single thing about Jamar Chase last year. I don't want to hear anything about anything. This was the greatest season for a wide receiver in NCAA history.
Absolutely, it was.
And man, so listen, I'm gonna have a runner up here just because I think that I think we should highlight some other offensive players outside of DeVonta Smith, Brandon. And I have an interesting pick here, so just ride with me for a second. I have Elijah Moore, Ole Miss wide receiver.
Okay.
And I think he was I think he was right up there, man. I mean, in 8 games, Brandon, because he got hurt. Only 8 games, he had 86 catches, almost 1,200 yards for 14 yards per catch, 8 touchdowns on those catches. And he also kind of returned kicks. He only had 3. But I think he was explosive, Brandon. And I think you can kind of vouch for this too, because you know about this kid too. This kid, I think, is one of the more underrated wide receivers in the league. And he increased his catches, yards, average, and touchdown in 4 less games this year than he had last year. He's on the upswing. I know he'll never live down the peeing celebration in the Egg Bowl, but I think this kid was one of the best wide receivers in the SEC this year, and I think he deserves his respect, being a 5'9", 185 wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And then that's – unfortunately, he will be remembered for that, at least in his college days. Hopefully, maybe he'll go on to see some other things. Elijah Moore. Okay. I mean, he was a really great receiver. I can't disagree with you there. I've got a different pick. I've got a quarterback here, and it might not be the quarterback that you think. I talk crap about this kid all season long, but I truly think he was probably the best quarterback in the SEC, and I think that's Kyle Trask. I think he had the best season. Don't come talking to me about Mac Jones. Yes, he had an incredible season. He did things that a lot of quarterbacks haven't done in a long time, but he also had DeVonta Smith. He also had John Mechie, and he also kind of had Jalen Waddle. Kyle Trask, yeah, he had Kadarius Toney. Yeah, he had Kyle Pitts. But good Lord. I mean, 68.9% passing, Zach, over 437 passing attempts for 301 receptions. He had 4,283 passing yards. That number is crazy. I know we talked about Joe Burrow last year, and we're like, oh, no one's ever going to come close to this. Well, he came pretty close to it. Not percentage-wise, but passing yards. 43 passing touchdowns to only 8 interceptions. I mean, that's incredible. As much as I hate talking about a Florida Gator, I already talked about a Texas Longhorn earlier. So I guess things can't get too much worse for me. So yeah, Kyle Trask, absolutely, probably the best quarterback in the SEC this season. If JT Daniels would have played more, maybe, but he didn't. I mean, it was just like too little, too late.
Yeah, I agree with that. I get what you mean about that. I like that pick a lot. I want to try to give some of these other guys some shine, man. It's the same thing. We talk about Kyle Trask and DeVonta Smith every week. But you know what? I didn't follow that rule on the defensive side of the ball, Brandon, because I knew you weren't going to go defense. I know people never get enough defense in their life. I'm going with Patrick Surtain.
Yeah.
As my defensive MVP. 37 tackles, 3.5 for loss. He only had 1 interception, but y'all know I break it down better than anybody out here. Brandon, he was targeted 48 times. Why would you target this dude 48 times? I don't understand it.
It makes no sense.
He allowed 21 catches, which is a 43% completion rate against him, and he only allowed 270 yards against him, Brandon.
Absolutely insane.
And the best part, He allowed less than 85 yards after the catch.
Why are you passing toward this guy?
I don't get it. And listen, he only allowed listen, this is the craziest stat ever. Only allowed 2 touchdowns all year, Brandon. He had 0 penalties.
0?
0. He never had a pass interference call on him.
Wow. Now that's
and for his career, Brandon, he's allowed 4 touchdowns. He has 4 interceptions for his career.
See, this doesn't. Man, he was so good though.
that is way impressive. I mean, listen, he graded out at a 90 for Pro Football Focus, man.
Right.
I mean, Brandon, he played 916 snaps, 555 in coverage, and he only got targeted 48 times.
That's bananas.
I mean, come on, bro. That doesn't make any sense. Brandon, he had multiple games this year where he allowed 0 catches.
I knew he was good, but now that you're reading his stats out, like this is, I don't understand how he was.
Okay, we're just gonna have a Patrick Surtain like party here. Which 2 games this year, Brandon, do you think Patrick Surtain allows 0 catches?
I have a feeling it's gonna be like teams that you wouldn't expect. So I'm gonna go with Florida.
No. He allowed 2 catches against Florida.
Okay. LSU had to be.
Yep. 0 receptions against LSU. He was targeted 5 times.
Yeah. So, and is it Auburn? Please tell me it's Auburn.
No, he allowed 3 catches against Auburn.
Was it? I'm like blanking on who Alabama even played. Who was it?
Mississippi State. A pass-heavy air raid. 0 catches allowed. Brandon, he only had 3 games where he allowed more than 3 catches, and it was Auburn, Tennessee, and Georgia.
Wow.
Every other game, he allowed 2 or less.
I mean, that's wild.
I mean, but to allow 0 catches against LSU and Mississippi State, which are 2 of the most pass-heavy teams they play, is outrageous.
I get it against LSU. I get it. But that's coming from me, a disgruntled LSU fan.
He was never targeted more than 7 times in a game.
I mean, probably for a good reason. Like
that's facts. That's facts. And that's why, okay, listen, I just want a little rant here. That's why I hate people who don't know football talking about DB stats. They're like, he's not an elite defender because he doesn't have a lot of interceptions. It's like, because no one throws at him. Like, if you have a 10 interception year, why in the world would you throw it to that person?
Right.
Like, it's wild. You got to get deep in these stats, guys. That's why I love Pro Football Focus for these. But yeah, 0 catches allowed in multiple games this year. Patrick Surtain was the defensive player of the year in the SEC. I think he was by far, Brandon, by far and away, not even a conversation, the best defensive player best DB in the country this year.
Absolutely, he was.
That's tough. But yeah, so you picked DeVonta Smith, so it's fine. You don't have to talk defense with me. You know, it's upsetting. I feel lonely when I talk defense. No one understands me over here. But guys, that is a wrap on our Best of 2020 MVP special here. We got a few more left, but we have some special Senior Bowl coverage coming very, very soon. We got draft coverage coming up not too far in the future. We have a lot of stuff planned. So just y'all already know. Y'all have been with us for over a year now. Y'all know just because the off season is here, the content keeps flowing here on the Blue Bloods. So go ahead, follow us on Instagram at @_Bluebloods. Follow us on Twitter at @_Bluebloods. Follow us on Facebook at the Blue Bloods Pod. Website thebluebloodspod.com. YouTube the Blue Bloods or the Blue Bloods CFB podcast. I think that's all of them. I feel like I'm forgetting one, but I know I'm not. You guys can subscribe, listen, rate, like, tell everybody about the podcast wherever you listen, man. We are available literally everywhere. We appreciate all y'all listening. We got announcements coming soon, but make sure to do all that stuff first, and we'll be back soon. But for right now, we out.